Okay, welcome back to our sixth in a series of 7 debates for the upcoming 7 Anchorage Assembly races. Today we're doing District 4 Seat G, Midtown Anchorage, with incumbent Felix Rivera and challenger Travis Szanto. This is one of 2 races where there's an incumbent running. The other 5 we've talked about have no incumbent and are open seats. First, I want to thank our sponsors, GCI, the IBW Local 1547, and the Alaska Political Report. We're going to have a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate. We're going to talk about a bunch of issues affecting Anchorage. We're going to have a candidate Q&A, discuss some more issues, and we'll conclude with 2-minute closing statements. So we drew at random, and for the first one, Travis Szanto, you're first for the opening statement. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name's Travis Szanto. I'm running for Midtown, District 4, Seat G. I got up here about my wife and I got up here about 9 years ago, and we fell in love with the place. We were gonna plan on just coming through and start just travel, because we had been traveling for about 4 years beforehand. We lived in Texas for a little while, Hawaii. We made it to California, Seattle, Washington, and then we made our way up here. We settled here, and my wife told me that she loved it here, and she didn't want to move, so that's why we're here. At this time, 9 years ago, we started to get settled in. We bought a house about 5 years ago, and we were pleasantly surprised with the city. And over the past few years, we've kind of seen a steady decline in Anchorage. And excuse me. We didn't know what to do. You know, we, as concerned citizens, we constantly were talking about it with our neighbors and seeing what we could do and seeing if there was any solutions. And recently somebody said, hey, there's an election coming up, maybe you should run for assembly. And I just kind of laughed it off for a second, and I didn't think about it. But then we started talking about it more, and my wife said, well, why would you want to run for assembly? And I said, well, I'm actually sick of complaining, and I'd like to step up and actually do something about it. So that's why I decided to run. I love this city, and right now I'm running on enhancing spending transparency. I'm running on creating common sense solutions for homelessness, and actually creating more community communication. So my name's Travis Szanto, and thank you.
Thanks, Travis. We'll go to Felix Rivera next for the opening statement.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Felix Rivera, and I've represented Midtown on the Anchorage Assembly since 2017. And I'm running for my final term because the job isn't done just yet. We need strong leadership right now that can work with others, has a track record of success, and isn't afraid to tackle the tough issues we face. That is pretty much me in a nutshell. In spite of the maelstrom that has been City Hall for the last year and a half, I have worked with this assembly to make real progress on public safety and homelessness. I worked with the community to stop the bleeding during the height of the pandemic by wisely using the CARES and ARPA dollars we received. I've also been a leading voice on issues like public transit, climate change, and ensuring we have as transparent, collaborative, and accountable of a body as possible. Those are parts of the job that I like. Another part of the job today is holding the mayoral administration accountable. We are in uncharted territory, and the liability against the municipality grows with every headline. Guess who will foot the bill for every illegal or unethical act? All of us. I have no issue working with the administration when it will move the city forward. At the same time, we cannot afford a rubber stamp assembly, and I have no qualms in calling out this administration when it does wrong by the people. I look at our city today and I see people who are frustrated by a crumbling and dysfunctional administration. People who want our streets to get plowed so that they can get to work and kids can get to school. People who want the drama to stop. I also look at our city today and I see endless possibility. But let me be frank, that possibility will only exist if we elect a strong assembly that will work together to achieve results. I look forward to continuing to be a part of the solution and would be honored to close out my journey on the assembly with another 3 years to finish the job.
Thanks, Felix and Travis. First thing I want to talk about, and you mentioned it, is snow plowing. We live in a subarctic climate. We were the choice for the Olympics twice in the 90s, for the Winter Olympics. And, we had historic snowfall in December, but even now, some of the roads are still not really fully plowed. The 4-lane roads are kind of, 2-lane roads. So I'll start with you, Felix. What's going on with the snow plowing and the roads and the sidewalks, and how do we fix that? And, there were school closures for 10 days into December. There was economic impact of people and businesses being able to get to work. So, what's going on? How do we solve that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been an extremely frustrating winter for everyone. And I have made it clear to this administration that we need to do better. And so this assembly, part of what we have done so far, we passed during the November budget cycle a $1.5 million increase to the snow plowing budget so that we could do more snow hauling and plowing of our sidewalks, because that's really critical. We also actually today we learned about a proposal brought forward by some of my colleagues to increase that even further by about another $400,000 because we are looking for every penny that we can scrounge to make sure that we have adequate snow plowing, not just for this winter, but also for the coming winter and the fall. What happened? I think there's two things that happened. One is staffing, right? We just didn't have enough staff to staff all of our equipment. And then two is equipment. When it came to maintaining our equipment, we just didn't have all the necessary parts, and there's a significant lead time, sometimes 6-month lead time for us to actually get all of the equipment that we need. So, one of the things that's been frustrating for me is that the administration knew, they were told by the union that represents the employees that work on our snowplows, that in June, we need to get ready because this could be a disaster. And they did not. And it wasn't until November that the administration told us that these issues exist. So it's very frustrating. I think we can do better by planning better in the future.
I'm going to go to Travis next on snow plowing and, the impact on the city. And, what do you think caused it? And what are your thoughts about, making it so we can plow our roads in the winter?
Well, I know since we moved up here 9 years ago, we moved up here because we wanted to see snow. And in the past 9 years, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen like big snowfalls like this. So when it comes down to it, I could see where possibly the administration before this one and this one have been scaling back with the equipment and with the people in order to save the taxpayers' money and save the city money. So this year, I believe we got caught with our pants down, and it kind of goes to show that maybe we should open up like other avenues and possibly, I guess, open up the contracts, or maybe there's a clause in the contract when we have so much snow that we could go to and hire outside contractors to help clean up the snow real quick. And then they would end up going away because I know there's people out there sitting and they've got equipment that's ready, that's running. They've got people that's willing to work and they're sitting at home this winter. They're doing private stuff, but they can't help with the city roads. So maybe that's an avenue that we could look for, and that would probably save us money and be able to take care of the roads in a quicker amount of time.
For the next question, I'll start with you, Travis. If you were to be successful, there's at least 5 new members. If you were to win, there'd be 6, and there could be 7 even. There's 2 incumbents running. If you were to be successful, how would you navigate being, in an assembly? We have Forrest Dunbar and Jamie Algren to the legislature. Pete Peterson's termed out, and then Suzanne LaFrance and Austin Quinn Davidson aren't running for re-election. So if you were to be successful, how would you kind of navigate being on an assembly with, half of the people would be new?
I think it would be a big learning curve. I think it's going to be a big learning curve no matter what, especially when I win or if I win. It's going to be a learning curve for me to actually be able to navigate this whole new system that I'm going to have to go through. As long as everybody else that possibly could win. If the incumbents win, they know what they're doing. They've been there for a few years. I'm sure they've gone through the same learning curve, but it's all going to have to be with teamwork, communication. We're all just going to have to try to get along, hopefully, and start building bridges in order to be able to talk and get some stuff done for the city.
So Felix, a little different for you. If you were to win, you'd be in your 3rd term, but even so, there's going to be at least 5 new people. So, navigating an assembly with some folks that have been on there for a while, but then a lot of new people who haven't been on there. How would you navigate that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I have actually had the fortune of working with a lot of new assembly members over the years. And one of the first things that I do with every assembly member, doesn't matter what political affiliation they are, is right after I know that they have won, I give them a call and I ask them, hey, let's go for coffee. And so I did that with Jamie Allard when she was elected. I did that with Randy Saltz when he was elected, with Kevin Cross when he was elected. It doesn't matter your political affiliation, because we are here to focus on the basics and make sure that we have a city that is functioning for the people. And so I want to get to know everyone, and I want to see what their priorities are, see where we align, see how we can work together. And I've been able to do that successfully with pretty much everyone that I've worked with on the Assembly.
Next, I want to talk about housing. I want to talk about specifically the Holton Hills housing in Girdwood, and then kind of generally housing in Anchorage. So I'll start with you, Felix. Recently, there was the Holton Hills proposal that was the Heritage Land Bank RFP from a couple years ago, and got pretty contentious. Some folks in Girdwood were against it. It was involving a 60-acre parcel, and that got voted to be tabled basically 7-5. And so I guess first, why did you vote to table that? And then second, what kind of message do you think that sends in a city where the average price of a house is almost $500,000, and it's not just supply, it's not just the cost, it's also supply of building. And we, people in the Valley joke about things for not doing projects because they're building in the Valley. So I guess first Holton Hills, and then second, just housing in general in Anchorage.
Yeah, thanks. So with regard to Holton Hills, I did vote against that proposal for two main reasons. One, unlike a lot of other housing projects that come before the Assembly, this would be truly a public-private partnership, and the municipality would play a very key role to making sure that this project would be successful or not. And frankly, with the current administration we have, and with the vastly understaffed Heritage Land Bank department that we have, I just had no faith that this administration would be able to functionally run this project. In addition to that, Girdwood has a vision for housing that they want in their community, and they were telling us, just pause, just wait. We have a land use plan for Girdwood that's going to be coming out soon. We have all of these steps that are happening that we're in the middle of. This is a little bit of the cart before the horse, so just pause, and then we will come back to this. So that is why, two reasons why I voted against the proposal. But generally, with regard to housing, this Assembly is very gung-ho about making sure that we have more housing. It's why we are looking at all kinds of different reforms for Title 21 and Title 23, so that we can reduce the regulatory burden, so that we can build more housing. And I am totally in support of working with my colleagues on that. In addition, I have led the charge with regard to housing and homelessness to create 300 new housing units. So there should be no ifs, ands, or buts about my priority is housing, and I have done the work to make sure we have new housing in the municipality.
Travis, I'll go to you on the Holton Hills first, the proposed development in Girdwood, and then also just in the city housing in general, the cost of housing and the supply of housing for people that would want to move here. We see a real housing problem right now.
Yeah, we do, and that's why I was kind of surprised that Holton Hills actually got voted down. We constantly hear that there's a housing crisis. So why, to many people, they ask, why did it get voted down? And I don't think they know the ins and outs as much as the Assembly does. But still, if there's such a housing crisis, why didn't we push this forward, and why didn't we get it taken care of? Plus, with the amount of regulations that we've seen come down the pipeline as far as how hard it is to build in the city, I can totally understand why we have a housing crisis. I mean, we supposedly have lost, I don't know how much of our population, and we still have a housing crisis these days. So I'm unsure exactly why, but I would like to actually get down to the bottom of it and see if we can actually get some progress in building some homes here. That really doesn't have to do with government oversight. If we can back off on some of our policies so that we can get some privatized homes going up and getting some business to actually build some stuff that people like, let's take a page out of the book that Wasilla has.
For the next question, I want to talk about the relationship between the mayor and the Assembly. We've seen, with the mask mandate and the homelessness, and I kind of joke that years ago these meetings were kind of boring, and now they're entertaining, but it's also gotten to be pretty toxic and contentious. So, and the Assembly the whole time so far, Bronson's been mayor, they've had a kind of supermajority veto override, and that's gotten also contentious. So I'll start with you, Travis. on the relationship between the assembly and the mayor, and if you were to be elected and successful, how would you see improving that so it's not, so crazy as it's been the last couple of years, year and a half?
I think the biggest thing would be communication. I think we need better communication between everybody. And right now we see a big push when you have control. There's people that don't want to relinquish that control, and they don't want to talk to one another. Then they get in this group and they get in this pod and they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And you're going to have to take a seat back, when that's not how government's supposed to be run. We're supposed to actually all come together, collaborate, talk it out, and come to a solution that everybody likes. And right now, with everybody that I'm talking to and all the neighbors I'm talking to, they don't see it that way. And that's why I decided to run also, is because we need better communication in our government.
So Felix, I'll go to you with you've been there the whole time with Bronson, and even before with Berkowitz, it started to get a little bit contentious with the meetings. But why do you think it's been so contentious, and how do you see, if you were to win and get reelected, improving that going forward?
Yeah, so I think there's this mythos that the assembly and the mayor don't agree on anything, and we argue about everything, and we don't talk to each other at all. And I would say that is just totally false. There are plenty of issues where the mayor and the assembly actually have alignment, but there are also some very critical issues where we don't. And a big part of that has to do with communication and trust. This mayor has lost the trust of many assembly members when it comes to homelessness, as an example. And it's because of his actions, right? He has proven that we cannot trust him when it comes to homelessness. But when it comes to other issues, like land use issues, Title 21, Title 23, building code regulations, we actually have some very competent people that we know that we can work with. And so we are making some really great strides on those issues. So when we can work with this administration and trust this administration, we will. When we cannot, we won't, and we will work with community partners to try to make some progress.
Okay, we're going to go to the candidate Q&A period. So guys can each ask 2 questions, and we'll start with you, Felix, and then there can be a response and then a brief rebuttal. So we'll start with you for your first question to Travis, and like I said, there can be a brief rebuttal, and then we'll go to Travis next, and we'll follow the order. So
thanks.
Go ahead, Felix.
Thanks, Jeff. So, Travis, the Anchorage Daily News recently published an editorial which outlined many of the scandals of the Bronson administration in a very matter-of-fact way. Some of those included firings that have led to wrongful termination lawsuits, the Joe Gerace resignation and lack of accountability from the mayor, and the now famous DeBosque letter, which outlines many serious allegations, several of which have proven to be true. You are supported by the mayor. How could you possibly hold the mayor accountable while serving on the assembly?
Actually, when there is proof of all the accusations, then yeah, I would say I need to be able to see the proof, and I need to be able to have it in hand. And I'd like to be able to talk to him about the allegations and the proof that's there, and say, hey, let's just have a discussion about this. Is this true? Is it not true? Let's get both sides of the story, is what I'd like to say, before I could actually make a decision on that. And if what he did was wrong, or if all these allegations come true and charges are brought, then I'd like to see that before I actually make a decision. But until now, he is the person that is acting head. So I'm going to have to support that while he's there, until he's not.
Felix, brief rebuttal if you'd like.
Thanks. So what I just heard is, I heard an individual that is not interested at all in holding the mayor accountable, in investigating the issues, and in protecting the people of the municipality, the employers of the municipality, and the financial resources of the municipality. And that should be very alarming to the voters of Midtown. We need someone who is going to be proactive and not reactive.
Okay, Travis, your first question to Felix.
Yeah. You being on the chair of the Committee on Homelessness and Housing, can you tell me how much money has the Assembly spent on solving the homelessness issue in the past 3 years?
Yeah, thanks. So this is very funny because actually the Midtown Community Council requested this data. And so the only one that I still have in my mind right now is the 2022 spending numbers. I don't have the 2021 or 2020 spending numbers in my mind. But 2022 spending numbers, we spent approximately, mostly federal money, about $33 million, of which most of that was housing projects, like funded through the Cook and Housing and others for low-income affordable housing. A good chunk of that, 33 million, maybe about 10 to 11 million, was for emergency cold weather shelter, which has been very expensive this winter.
Travis,
Okay.
want to rebuttal?
Yeah, real quick. That's 1 out of the 3 years. Again, being chair of the committee, I think you should probably know the numbers, and I'd appreciate if you would actually tell the people how much we spent, or if you don't know, then you don't know.
Okay, we'll go to Felix next for your second question.
Yeah, thanks. So on your website, you don't really talk much about your stance on issues. You have 5 short bullet points which speak to what you might do as an assembly member. Many of those bullet points you speak to are already being done. So in public forums, you talk about how transparency is important to you, but your website is not very transparent. So why aren't you being more transparent to the voters on your thoughts on the issues instead of the platitudes currently on your website?
Well, at this point, we got into the race very, very late. I mean, second to the last day. We have tried to set up our website, and it's very hard getting into the new realm of political stuff when you don't have a whole lot of help. My wife and I are the ones that are pretty much running the whole campaign, and we don't have a whole lot of time to actually update the website at this point. I'm out trying to talk to people, and she's on the phone calling people and trying to get everybody's opinions on the issues, and that's what I'm doing by going door to door. So as far as the website goes, we just have not had time.
Felix, brief rebuttal if you'd like.
Thanks. So first, the Szanto campaign is actually run by an out-of-state firm. So I just want to clarify that for the voters. But I think in general, we need someone who is prepared to do this job. And what I just heard from my opponent is that he is not. So I think we need experienced leadership that's going to take us to the next step, and I am ready to do that.
And Travis, before you do your next question, if you want to, he made a comment about your campaign, so if you want to address that, you can.
Sure, yeah.
First,
And at first, when we didn't know what we were doing with the campaign, we hired an outside company to help us with that. We knew that right away that we could not afford them, and we decided to take it over from there. So we have been doing it ourselves ever since. We parted ways with them, and we have been hiring a lot more people in state and in the city to help us out where we could. But again, at the last second, it's hard to find people that aren't completely busy at this point.
Okay, then if you want to go to your second and last question to Felix.
Sure. On your palm card, it says you represent all Anchorage voices. We have about 49,000 people roughly in our district. How many of those people have you personally talked with in the last year, face to face?
I couldn't give you a number. Tens of thousands of individuals. I talk to people all the time. When I'm at the grocery store, people recognize me. They want to talk to me about the issues. When I'm at the gas station, people recognize me. They want to talk to me about the issues. I go to all 9 of my community councils, which I think I'm the only person here who can say that. And I go to as many community convenings and events so that I can, so I make sure that I am in tune and understand as many of my constituents as possible.
And Travis, last word.
Yeah, so tens of thousands of people you talked to in the past, that's a lot. I mean, I don't even know how you're able to do your job, but appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to go to some more questions and topics about Anchorage. We're going to start with you, Felix, on you guys touched on this, the homelessness problem. I've been here since 2004. We've seen this problem go back decades. There's been the Sullivan Arena situation. There was this Centennial Park stopgap measure last summer. There's been the Golden Lion. The Assembly had a plan before buying some buildings. The mayor didn't like that he has a navigation center, but ultimately we see the problem getting worse visibly, and there's been a lot of resources spent over the years. You know, how do we solve this, and why do you think it's not been solved in the last, you know, many, this goes back, you know, many administrations, many years?
Yeah, thanks. So we know that housing is the solution to homelessness. It's why we are a housing first city. That is the officially adopted policy of the municipality of Anchorage. Why is that our policy? Because we know that people need a roof over their heads before they can focus on substance misuse issues, on mental or behavioral health issues, on workforce development issues. Whatever issues that people may have, they need a roof over their head first before they can deal with those other issues. And that's what Housing First is about. It's about making sure you have a roof, dealing with the other issues, and then building your path towards independence. I think we have a solution that will, I think, be very visionary and very great for our community, and that is the Arctic Rec Center. It meets two of the needs of our community. One of them is increased shelter beds. We know we need 200 permanent year-round shelter beds, and the other is housing. The Arctic Rec Center has a parcel of land behind it where we can build some housing. So that is the type of, I think, visionary, permanent, future-focused solutions that we need to implement.
Travis, I'll go to you next on homelessness. Like I said, this has been a long-time problem. There's been the fight over the Sullivan Centennial. There's been this Golden Lion situation with other buildings. What are your thoughts on homelessness and kind of solving this problem that's been, you know, very visible, increasingly visible?
Oh, I'd like to solve the problem. I think we just need to figure out how we're going to solve the problem. You know, the housing first thing is great. Then again, we had a plan in the beginning with the first administration and their first plan, and they were going to put up 450 beds for, I think the price tag was going to be about $15 million. And the assembly decided they didn't want to do that because they didn't believe in the administration. So we're going towards a $15 million 80-bed situation. So I don't understand where all the money's going when it comes to it. And right now, without knowing the number of what we spent over the past 3 years on homelessness, it's hard to figure out what we can do with it. But I think first off, for sure, we need to have a bed for everybody. And then from there, we also need to have therapy. We need to have counselors, and we need to have follow-up with them and see if we can actually get the people from government housing, which we're trying to provide, to actually becoming members of society again and actually getting them a job and a purpose.
Thanks, Travis. Next topic, I want to talk about body cams. A couple of years ago, the voters voted to fund body cams for APD, and there's been some kind of back and forth between the union on the policy of releasing the footage and storing the video, but it has been 2 years. So I'll start with you, Travis. Do you support the use of the body cameras, and why do you think it's been such a kind of fight over getting these implemented?
I do support the use of the body cams. I think it's a great protection for the police, and it's a great protection for the people on the other side. I don't know exactly why that we have this issue, but I've heard that we have storage issues for all of the information that we've got. I heard we have possible privacy issues, but we also have cities in the lower 48 and other places that are already using them. And maybe we should go to see how they implemented their system, and we could possibly do the same and follow what they do.
Yeah, Felix, I'll go to you on, do you support the use of the body cams? And like Travis said, I mean, the troopers, there's small and large departments all over the country and the world that have these things. It's not, you know, it's not like a brand new technology. So do you support the use of it, and why has it been such a hard implementation?
So I'm smiling because hell yeah, I support the use of body-worn cameras. This has been a very frustrating issue, and it's been one that I have been very vocal on, and I have been a leader on the assembly to try to see what we can do to bridge the gaps between the administration and the Anchorage Police Department Employees Association, the police union. There is a disagreement between those two parties around one specific issue that is stopping the implementation of body-worn cameras, and that's what's called pre-statement viewing. In short, it's basically the ability of police officers to view body-worn cameras after an incident but before they give a statement to an interviewer. So that is what's holding it up. I also think, though, that our body-worn camera policy is weak, specifically in the issue of how we release footage to the public. When it comes to serious incidents, those need to be released to the public automatically, in my opinion, after a certain amount of time. We can negotiate what that is, but I think we have some work to do with regard to body-worn cameras.
And then for our last question, before we go to closing statements, I'll start with you, Felix. For the last 10 years, Alaska's been losing population. We talked about the homelessness problem, the housing problem, the snow plowing problem. Some people, and including myself, unfortunately, don't have a very optimistic view about Anchorage. What's your vision and your view for Anchorage for the next 10 years based on all of the challenges we're facing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think first and foremost, we need a city that functions, right? Who wants to live in a winter city that can't plow its streets? So I think we need to get back to the basics and make sure that we are doing the basics well. And I have worked very well with this administration to figure that out and to see if we can come up with a path forward. But I think beyond that, I think we need to be able to invest in ourselves and what we see in our future. And I think part of what we see in our future, we have to have some really strong workforce development opportunities that will attract young families to come here and be part of the jobs of the future. I also think that we need to invest in our parks and trails system because that is what attracts people here. It is the place, it is the community, it is the mountains, right? It's all of these opportunities that attract people here. So I think we need to invest in those wisely.
And Travis, I'll go to you on your vision for Anchorage based on the challenges and what do you think? How are things going to look in the next 10 years in Anchorage?
Well, it depends on what we do with our spending cap here pretty soon. Because I know when a lot of people come up here and they look at houses, excuse me, they see an exuberant amount of taxes that they have to pay. And it's a sticker shock. It absolutely is. And then when they see what they get for those services, when they see what they get for the sticker shock and what they have to pay for taxes, they're not getting much. And they're getting a school system that's ranked in one of the lowest out of the 50 states. And so they're paying a high amount of money for a low amount of education that they're seeing in their mind. And then we can't plow our roads, we can't plow our streets. And I don't think that it's very appetizing for people to come up here and want to work. That's why we're losing people to the lower 48 and Wasilla, because it's just not an easy or inexpensive place to live.
Well, thank you, Travis and Felix. We're going to go to the closing statements. You're going to start, Felix, and again, I want to thank both of you for coming here and being part of the debate. So we're not timing it, but close to 2 minutes as possible. We'll start with you, Felix, on your closing statement.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. So when I was reelected in April of 2020, I had no idea what I was getting into. As chair of the Assembly during the height of the pandemic, I had the privilege of leading my colleagues through some pretty tumultuous times. With the help of my neighbors, I fought off a recall attempt. And of course, the face of municipal government changed on July 1st, 2021. I've been put in countless situations over the last 3 years where I had to make the decision between doing what was right or to compromise my values and do what was easy. I'm proud that I always chose to do what was right every single time. In the end, my neighbors know me and they trust me, even though they might not always agree with me. That's what it takes to represent a district like Midtown. We have to find a better way forward for the city that we all love. And that takes a type of leadership that is willing to make the tough calls and not take no for an answer. That's the type of quality that I have brought to the Assembly, and we would be honored to continue doing so for the next 3 years. Throughout my time on the Assembly, I've never forgotten the core concept that I serve the people. My votes should provide solutions to the issues my neighbors face. And I'm proud to say that I've done exactly that over the last 6 years. There are no problems we can't solve together. I believed that when I first ran in 2017 and continue to believe that to my core. Although we have a mayoral administration that is extremely difficult to work with sometimes, I will not let that stop me in making progress on the huge issues we face in our city. I started off today talking about the endless opportunities that we have as a city. I would be honored to have your vote so I can make those opportunities a reality and get the job done.
Thank you, Felix, and we'll go to Travis for your closing statement.
I'd like to just reach out to everybody and say, hey, if you like the way the city is going, and if you like the way the city's been going for the past 6 years, please vote the same way that you have. Right now, I just want to let you know you have a different choice. You have a choice that aligns possibly with what you believe in, and in a better and a different, more common sense solution for this city. I'm just a person of the people. I like to hear what you have to say. Please feel free to reach out, ask me questions. If you have any concerns for me, I'd like to hear those too, because that's what I'd like to bring for the assembly. Is I want to bring your voice, what you have to say. And I don't want to close any doors on anybody else. And I always have an open door policy. So if you have anything that you would like to bring, please, let's bring it to the assembly together, and then let's start building bridges together. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis, and again, thank you, Felix, both of you guys for coming onto the debate here. This has been for District 4, Seat G, one of the 2 races where there's an incumbent running for re-election. The other 5 races, it's open seat. So I want to again thank Felix Rivera and Travis Szanto for coming on. This is our 6th in a series of 7 debates for the upcoming assembly races. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, GCI, the IBEW Local 1547, and the Alaska Political Report. And again, I want to thank Travis and Felix. Ballots go out March 14th, which is next week, and the election concludes on April 4th. So make sure to vote and stay tuned for our final debate coming up soon. Thank you.